because I tried to give you a spoonful of vegetables and you wouldn't swallow it. Well, today I'm going to teach on attitudes. I thought maybe a few people might need an attitude adjustment. Matter of fact, Dave said, what are you going to teach on today? And I said, something specifically for you. Attitudes. You know, I have one mirror in my house, like a decorative mirror, that has a tendency to just get a little tiny bit crooked. And that kind of stuff bothers me. And so it's a little bit hard to get to it and adjust it, so sometimes I'll let it go for a while, and every time I walk by it, it just kind of like bothers me. And you know, that's the way a bad attitude is. It's like you may let it go and let it go and let it go, but really it just kind of bothers you. You may not really know why your joy is messed up or why you don't feel as peaceful, but it not only bothers you, but it bothers everybody else if you have a bad attitude. But if I take just a little bit of effort, sometimes I got to stretch myself over another piece of furniture and get up there to that mirror, and if I just go, just a little tiny adjustment, then it just feels so good again when I'm in that room. Same way, I've got a heat and an air conditioning vent in my office at home, that every once in a while the little vents in it will get in a certain position where it will make this weird little noise when the air blows through it. And I don't do well with weird little noises. I'd almost rather have a loud noise than a weird little nitpicky noise. And so sometimes I'll put up with it for a couple days, and then I'll have to get somebody to come and make a little adjustment, and then it's okay again. You might be surprised how much better your life would be if you would just make a little adjustment in your attitude. And I find out that there's so many wrong attitudes that we can get into, and so many right ones that we need to have, that we need to adjust our attitude on a daily basis. You know, it's pretty easy, for example, to get discontented, isn't it? A little bit grumpy, a little murmury, just not really too satisfied with what you got, think you ought to have more. Well, let me help you adjust your attitude. If you feel a little grumpy, maybe you're having a little hard time sleeping tonight, just remember the homeless family who has no bed to lie in. Should you find yourself stuck in traffic, don't despair. There are people in the world for whom driving an automobile is an unheard of privilege. Should you have a bad day at work, think of the man who's been out of work for 3 months. Should you despair over a relationship that is troublesome, think of the person who's never even known what it's like to love or to be loved. Should you grieve over the fact that your boss denied your request to work 4 days a week and have a 3-day weekend, think of the woman in dire straits working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for $10 a week just to feed her family in a third world country. Should your car break down, leaving you a mile away from assistance, think of the paraplegic who would love the opportunity to take that walk. If you didn't get the parking place that you wanted when you came to the conference today and you had to walk a couple of blocks and you complained, it's time for an attitude adjustment. Should you notice a new gray hair in the mirror, think of the cancer patient in chemotherapy who wishes she even had some hair to examine. Should you find yourself discouraged because you can't decide what your life's calling is, be thankful. There are those who didn't even live long enough to get the opportunity to think about what their life's calling might be. Should you find yourself the victim of other people's bitterness, ignorance, smallness, or insecurities, remember, things could be worse. You could be that person. There's all kinds of attitudes, positive attitudes, negative attitudes, contented, discontented, humble, proud, haughty, responsible, irresponsible, thankful, unthankful, merciful, unforgiving, self-pitying. The list just goes on and on and on and on and on. But if you can keep your attitude the way that Jesus kept his attitude, and he should be our example in everything, including attitude. Philippians 2 says, let this same attitude and humble mind be in you, which was in Christ Jesus. Let him be your example in humility and every other kind of attitude. I'm telling you today that if you can adjust your attitude on a daily basis, no matter what's going on in your life, you can still enjoy your life. Let me ask you a question. Is your problem really your problem, or is it your attitude toward your problem that's your problem? One more time. Is your attitude really your problem? I mean, is your problem really your problem, or is it your attitude toward your problem that's the problem? Do you know that there are people in the world who have the exact same problem that you do, and yet they're a lot happier than you are? And there's people who have a much worse problem than you, and yet they're a lot happier than you are. And it's not about the problem, it's about the way they decide to look at their problem. You know, this message today is not hard. There's nothing deep about it. There's nothing complicated about it. But if you can get hold of this today, I believe many of you that have been unhappy and lack peace and not making any progress in your life, if you can just keep your attitude lined up with God's will, you'll be amazed at what will happen in your life. Change your outlook, you can change your life. Your attitude is your thought life turned inside out. It's the way you decide to think about things. Your attitude affects everything. It affects you. It affects the people around you. It especially affects your countenance, the look on your face. It doesn't take very long to find somebody who has a bad attitude. An airplane has an instrument on it called the attitude indicator. Now, you would think it would be the altitude indicator, but it's called the attitude indicator. And it shows the position of the plane to the horizon. When the airplane is climbing, it's said to have a nose-high attitude because the nose of the airplane is pointed above the horizon. When the aircraft is diving, it's said to have a nose-down attitude because the nose of the plane is below the horizon. Now, assuming that the horizon represents average, if we have a nose-high attitude, our life is going to be above average. If we have a nose-down attitude, then our life is going to be below average. What kind of life do you want to have? Well, Joyce, I just want God to bless me and give me a good life. Well, are you willing every day to renew your mind and renew your attitude? Take a little bit of time every morning in your time with God on your way to work and just think, is there any area in my life, God, where I need an attitude adjustment? When people ask you later today where you were today, you could say, I was busy getting an attitude adjustment. And boy, did I ever need it. Probably some of you, a lot of mornings when you turn my TV program on, when it's over, you've had an attitude adjustment. Anybody's attitude can be changed if they want to change it. Ephesians 4:23. And be constantly renewed, in the spirit of your mind, constantly having a fresh mental and spiritual attitude. Now let's back up and look at verse 22. Strip yourselves of your former nature, put off and discard your old unrenewed self, which characterized your previous manner of life, and becomes corrupt through lust, desires that spring from delusion. He's saying, put off the old man, put off the old life. Don't act the way that you used to act anymore. Now jump over to verse 24. And put on the new nature, the regenerate self, created in God's image, godlike in true righteousness and holiness. So verse 22 says, stop acting like the old man. Verse 24 says, and begin to act like the new creature that you are. But verse 23 is the bridge from how we get from acting like the old man to acting like the new man. Let's put verse 23 up again. And be constantly renewed in the spirit of your mind. having a fresh mental and spiritual attitude. You know, it's your attitude in life, not your aptitude, that will determine your level of success. You don't need to worry so much about whether you're as gifted as somebody else. You might not be as gifted as somebody else at work, and the devil would like to make you think, well, you didn't get a chance to go to college, so you'll never get a promotion, or, you know, you're not as smart as them, you'll never get a promotion. But I'll tell you a secret. If you will have a better attitude than anybody else in the company, you'll get promoted above everybody else. I would much rather work with somebody who's got a great attitude and maybe is not the sharpest tool in the box, as somebody who just really has got it all together, and man, they can just run circles around everybody and do 25 different things, but man, they have got a stinking, prideful, haughty, I'm better than everybody else attitude. You'll be amazed how the Holy Ghost will hook up with you if you'll just keep a good attitude. I want to work with people who have a humble attitude, a thankful attitude, a positive attitude, a responsible attitude. Take an attitude inventory. If you would describe your general attitude toward life, which one of the following songs would you be singing when you get up every morning? Make the world go away. Raindrops keep falling on my head. I'll do it my way. Or, oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. Now, I have to tell you that in the earlier years of mine and Dave's marriage, before God really got a chance to do much work on me, I was one serious, somber, bad attitude lady. Dave, on the other hand, is happy and positive and just, he gets up and he'd start singing, and I would actually ask him to be quiet. Do you have to sing when you get out of bed in the morning? I wanted to think about my problems and what everybody had done to me, what I was going to do to get them back. And it sounds funny, but the sad thing is it's actually true. I didn't want to hear it. Well, you know what? I think the Lord's tired of hearing some of you sing the same old song. And in Psalm, it says in several places, sing unto the Lord a new song. And so I wrote a new song for you. See if you can learn to sing this song. No matter what comes my way, I'm going to have a good day. Everything will be okay. I may get a raise in pay. Oh, I tell you, I bet the worship teams are going to be after me now to be their lead singer. Don't you imagine? You know, everybody in the world just wants to be happy. I mean, really, when it comes right down to it, whether you're trying to buy happiness or promote yourself into happiness, marry your way into happiness, really, we all just really want to be happy. I mean, wouldn't you say that that's the bottom line of what you want in your life? But the mistake that we make is how we think we're going to get there. You know what a mirage is? It's like when you're out on the desert and you're so thirsty and the sun is shining a certain way and reflecting off the desert, and it actually looks like there's a pool of water out there. And I'm sure you've seen these desert movies where people that are just about to die of thirst, they'll go and dive into what they think is a pool of water and be sloshing around in the sand, and what a disappointment. Well, you know, I chased after mirages a lot of years of my life. Well, if I could just have more money, I'd be happy. And then that didn't do it. If I just, back years ago when I had an office job, if I just didn't have to work, I'd be happy. And then Dave said, well, then why don't you quit your job? So then I was like, well, if I could just get out of this house once in a while, then I'd be happy. Come on. If the devil would just leave me alone, I'd be happy. If Dave would change, I'd be happy. If my ministry would grow when I finally got into ministry, then I'd be happy. And I can tell you honestly, and I believe this with all my heart, your problem is really not your problem. Well, I guess we're going to have to stick on that one for a minute, aren't we? Because I tried to give you a spoonful of vegetables and you wouldn't swallow it. Your problem is really not your problem. I mean, I'm telling you the truth. Your problem is not your problem. It's your attitude toward your problem that's your problem. You need to put things in perspective. You know, we let things get out of perspective, and we tend to think that we focus on this thing in our life that we don't like, and we just focus on that and focus on that till it becomes so much bigger than what it has to be. Let me read you a little story that makes a point about having a proper perspective. Dear Mom and Dad, since I left for college, I know I've been remiss in writing, and I'm sorry for my thoughtlessness that I have not written you before now. So I'm going to bring you up to date in this letter. But before you read it, please sit down. Are you sitting down? Please don't read this unless you're sitting down. Well, I'm getting along pretty well now. The skull fracture and concussion that I got when I jumped out of my dormitory window when it caught on fire shortly after my arrival here has pretty well healed. I only get those sick headaches now once a day. Fortunately, the fire in my dorm and the jump was witnessed by an attendant at the gas station. He ran over, took me to the hospital, continued to visit me there. When I got out of the hospital, I had nowhere to live because of the burnout condition of my room, so he was kind enough to invite me to share his basement bedroom apartment with him. It's sort of small, but really cute. He is a very fine boy, and we've even fallen deeply in love and are planning to get married. We haven't set the exact date yet, but it will be before my pregnancy begins to show. Yes, Mom and Dad, I'm pregnant. I know how much you're looking forward to being grandparents, and I know you will welcome the baby and give it the same tender care and devotion that you gave me when I was a child. The reason for the delay in our marriage is that our boyfriend has a minor infection that I carelessly caught from him. I know, however, that you will welcome him into our family with open arms. After all, he is kind, and although not well educated, he is ambitious. Although he is of a different race and a religion than ours, I know that your often expressed tolerance will not permit you to be bothered by that. In conclusion, Mom and Dad, now that I have brought you up to date, I want to tell you there was no dormitory fire. I do not have a concussion or a skull fracture. I was not in the hospital, I'm not pregnant, I'm not infected, and there's no boyfriend in my life. However, I am failing history and science. And I wanted you to have a proper perspective. Can you imagine how happy those parents were? Oh, thank God it's only that they're failing in school. Oh, thank God. And if she would have called and just said, I'm failing history and science, they would have probably had a fit and gotten all upset and mad and yelled and screamed at her, and everybody would have been mad and crying. Maybe you need to take a little time today to look at your problem in the proper perspective of what's going on around the world and what kind of things people are dealing with. I'm going to say it again. Your problem is really not your problem. It's your attitude toward your problem that's your problem. And see, the great thing about an attitude is it's your attitude, and you can change it. You don't have to wait for it to change. You can actually just change your attitude. Viktor Frankl, while in a concentration camp in Germany, said the last of human freedoms, and the one that nobody can take away, is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Even in a concentration camp, he decided, I have got something that you cannot take away from me. You can take away my food, you can take away my clothing, you can take away my bed, you can isolate me, you can force me to work at hard labor, but I have something you cannot take away from me. I have a good attitude, and you're not going to get it. See, I told you we're all getting an attitude adjustment today. Everybody just wants to be happy. And interestingly enough, the Bible repeatedly tells us, and I don't like it any better than you do, but it repeatedly tells us when we have trials and tribulations to be happy. Jesus said in John 16:33, in the world you will have tribulation. It's a promise. And then the next thing he said is, cheer up. Thank you. Cheer up. Why? Because even though you have problems, you also have me. In the world you will have tribulation. Everybody in the world has tribulation. But you can cheer up because Jesus said, I have overcome the world. We need to stop being so bothered by our problems and just rejoice that we have God in our lives. Somebody said to me the other day, well, and it's a pretty good sized problem, well, I guess we're just going to have to trust God. And that just kind of hit me the wrong way. And I thought, you know what? I'm tired of saying that. I'm tired of hearing people say that. We don't just have to trust God. We get to trust God. It's a privilege to be able to trust God. What an honor it is to have a God that is faithful, that we know loves us, who has all power and all wisdom and all knowledge, who's everywhere all the time, never takes his eye off of us for one moment. We have problems, but we have God. The heathens, the unbelievers, have problems and more problems and problems and problems and more problems and no hope and no resolution. And they'll spend their whole life chasing mirages and then having the disappointment of finding out, well, that's not really what I thought it was going to be after all. James 1, I can't resist having us look at this. So you have to be convinced that even though you have a problem, you can still be happy. Because if you're not convinced, you never will be. Well, Joyce, but I just feel. That's the problem right there. But I just feel, and I just think. I don't want to talk today about how you feel and what you think. I want to talk about what you know. Who do you know? What does the Word say? Let's live a little deeper. We need deeper relationships with God. We need to go beyond what we want, think, and feel to what we know in the depths of our heart. I know that God is faithful. I've seen him be faithful too many times, over and over and over and over. Verse 2, James 1:2. Consider it wholly joyful, my brethren, when you are enveloped in or encounter trials of any sort and fall into various temptations. Be wholly, completely, totally joyful when you have all kinds of trouble. You notice the clapping stopped. Be assured and understand that the trial and the proving of your faith bring out endurance and steadfastness and patience. Well, I found out that they brought a lot of things out of me before we got around to patience and endurance. But see, that's why they're good for us. Those hard times in our life are when we get experience and when we get equipment for the things that God wants to use us for in the future. When you're going through a hard time, you can say, God, I don't like this. It doesn't feel good. But I'm going to rejoice anyway because I know that I'm going to gain something out of this. I'm going to get something out of this. I'm going to be more mature. I'm going to know you better when this is over than I did when it started. Well, let's always remember that it's our attitude toward our problems that's our real problem. As followers of Jesus Christ, we can rejoice that we have the problem solver living on the inside of us. You know, today we're offering you some good teaching about overcoming wrong mindsets. Wow. 4 hours of teaching about how you can set your mind in a wrong direction and end up with a wrong life. You can set your mind in a right direction and end up with a right life. You know, one of the things that we need to hear over and over and over is about the power of thoughts. The mind is the battlefield, and the enemy's always attacking us in that area. Our thoughts help produce our attitudes. Thoughts help produce attitudes. They both produce actions. So get this teaching on overcoming wrong mindsets, and you'll be on the road to a better life as soon as you start hearing these good things. God bless you and have a great day.
You should feel sorry for me.
I'm doing it my way.
I don't know how.
Having problems with wrong thoughts? Then receive Joyce's 4-CD teaching series, Overcoming Wrong Mindsets, for your gift of $25 or more. Call us toll-free 1-800-727-9673 or visit us at joycemeyer.org.
Morning.
There's an easier way to take Joyce with you. Watch episodes of Enjoying Everyday Life or read the daily devotional on the Joyce Meyer Ministries app. Download it for free today.
Well, I'm issuing a special invitation to you to attend one of my conferences this year. And some of you might say, well, Joyce, I'm just too busy. Well, you know, that's usually our first response to a lot of things. But really, when we make a commitment to come, I believe that God is really going to make a tremendous impact on your life. You know, it's very important for us to slow down and set aside time for God. So why don't you make plans to join us? We really would love to see you there.
Don't miss your chance to see Joyce live. Inspiring worship, life-changing teaching. The Joyce Meyer Conference is coming to Grand Rapids, Michigan, June 4th through 6th, with worship by Christy Knuckles, and Long Beach, California, July 30th through August 1st, with worship by Phil Wickham. All sessions are free. For more information and complete conference schedule, visit us at joycemeyer.org or call toll-free 1-866-SEE-JOYCE.
You mean more to us at Joyce Meyer Ministries than you may ever know. We appreciate you, and we thank our friends and partners for making this worldwide ministry possible. Together, we're feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, and presenting the gospel to the nations. Please contact us or visit joycemeyer.org today to share your prayer requests, find out more about our resources, see Joyce's conference schedule, and to join us in partnership as we share the love of Christ around the globe.
The proceeding was paid for by the friends and partners of Joyce Meyer Ministries. The following program is paid for by the friends and partners of Joyce Meyer Ministries.
When you're going through a hard time, you can say, God, I don't like this. It doesn't feel good. But I'm going to rejoice anyway because I know that I'm going to gain something out of this. I'm going to get something out of this. I'm going to be more mature. I'm going to know you better when this is over than I did when it started. And I'm encouraging you to say those things out loud. It'll be good for you to say, this doesn't feel good. It hurts, God. And I would really, in my natural person, prefer not to be here. But I know that you've got a plan. And I know that you're going to work something good in me. And when the time is just right, you will change my circumstance. Could I get you to start doing that? Saying some things out loud. And when you do, when you talk out loud the way God wants you to, according to the Word of God, it will change your feelings and it will change your mind. Or you can just sit there and go with the way you feel and what you think. Go to 1 Peter chapter 3. But even in case you should suffer for the sake of righteousness, you are blessed. happy and to be envied. Don't dread or be afraid of their threats, nor be disturbed by their opposition. Even if you do the right thing and you suffer for it. Now, you know, my head just goes tilt, 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 tilt. Something's wrong with this, something's wrong with this. If I do the right thing, I should get the right result. If I do the right thing, I should be blessed. Well, he's saying you are blessed, but you're blessed on a deeper level. I think the best thing that can happen to us in our lives, I said this to Dave one morning last week, I said, the greatest thing that God can teach us is how to be happy when things don't go the way we want them to. In Matthew chapter 5, we have a famous sermon from Jesus called the Sermon on the Mount, or the Beatitudes, spelled B-E-A-U-T-I-T-U-D-E-S, but I like to call them the Beatitudes, B-E/attitudes. They're the attitudes that we need to have if we want to have the joy that God says we can have. So if we could look at Matthew chapter 5 for just a moment. Blessed. And the Amplified Bible tells us what it means when we say blessed. If I say God bless you, this is what it means. Happy, to be envied, and spiritually prosperous with life joy and satisfaction. I love satisfaction in God's favor and salvation, regardless of your outward conditions. Oh, how awesome is that? Let's look at it again. Blessed. If I say God bless you, then what I'm saying, I want you to be happy, so happy that you're envied, and I want you to be spiritually prosperous. You notice it's not talking about my bank account. With life joy and satisfaction in God's favor and salvation, regardless of what's going on in your life. And can I tell you a secret? I think we spend a lot of time praying prayers that God's not all that interested in hearing. I think we talk to him way too much about stuff and things that we need and people that need to change for us to be happy, and pay raises and bigger houses and new cars and getting married or getting out of being married or whatever it might be. And I want to challenge you to start praying a little bit differently. Get up every day and say, you know, God, like anybody else, I hope everything goes my way today, but in case it doesn't, I'm praying right now that I'll remain stable, and that I will just be as happy as I would be if everything was going my way. Did it ever occur to you to pray ahead of time that you could be stable when you're not getting your way? I prayed that yesterday and today, and I pray that very often. We all want what we want, and there's nothing really wrong with that. We're human beings, and many times God does give you what you want. But we all know from experience that we don't always have every day go just the way that we'd like it to go. We have so many unbelievable hotel experiences in our ministry travel. And one would think, with the number of years that I have done this, and the number of hotels that I have stayed in, that I could get just a little tiny extra favor from God. And I could get in hotels where everything works. But no, once again, here in Albany, went in our hotel on Thursday. Usually when I get in town on Thursday, I like to study and take a little nap, get ready for Thursday night. The people who cleaned the room had left all the blinds open, and the sun was pouring into the room, and it's unseasonably hot here, so no amount of air conditioning was going to pull the temperature down. Therefore, I couldn't sleep. Turned the water faucet on in the sink in the kitchen, and the faucet came off in my hand. My bathroom sink was stopped up. If you ran water in it, then you had to turn the water off, and you had to wait for it to dribble out until you could run any more water. Thursday night, 12:30, at night, somebody tried to get in our room. It was a man who'd been sent to collect hangers out of empty rooms. And we had that locked on our door, and so when he shoved on it, it made this loud noise, and Dave jumps up and goes over there. What do you think they're doing? What are you trying to get into this room for? Who are you? What do you want? And the guy said, ooh, I thought the room was empty. Well, of course, by then, you know, we're all awake, and we're like, we always ask the desk not to put calls through to my room, and I'm sure you can understand that because there's no telling who all might want to call me and how often they might want to call, not realizing that I need to rest and study. And yet, I was taking my nap on Friday, sleeping nicely, and the phone starts ringing. Then yesterday, when we went home from the meeting, you would have loved to have seen this. We should have really taken a picture. This happens to us. I cannot tell you how many times this happens to us. They change the key card and you cannot get in your room. Even though you're still paying for the room, you cannot get in it. So they went and got a guy that was supposedly had a master key, and even his key wouldn't work. So here we are, me, Dave, my administrative assistant. We're just hanging out in the hotel hall, sitting in the floor. After being here doing this great meeting and everybody clapping and cheering, I think it's just God's way of letting me know that just remember who you are and where you came from. Just have a little seat right there in the dirty floor. And be patient and act like you tell everybody else to act in these meetings. Come on. But you know, the Bible actually says when things like that are going on, if I can remain the same, then I am so blessed. Actually, what happens when you can do that, your attitude is preaching a message to the devil. You are a loser. Once again, you didn't get me. Blessed are the poor in spirit, those who have a humble attitude. Blessed are those who, when they mourn, keep a positive attitude, because they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, those who have a very contented attitude. You know, a person who's not meek is haughty and proud, and they always think they deserve more than what they have. But a meek person is extremely thankful for every little thing that God or anybody else does for them. Blessed are those that are hungry for righteousness' sake. They have an attitude of excellence. They always want to do what's right. Blessed are the merciful. They have a very forgiving attitude. Oh, don't worry about it. I make plenty of mistakes myself. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who work for unity in themselves and with other people. And blessed are those who are persecuted for doing what's right, who keep an attitude of excellence no matter what it costs. Some people are set on excellence until it hurts, and then as soon as it hurts, they no longer want to be excellent. You know, we see a group of people in the Old Testament. We call them the Israelites because they were from Israel. And they became slaves in Egypt and spent many years in bondage, and they cried out to God desperately, and God sent them a deliverer, Moses, after he had him spend 40 years on the backside of the desert getting some equipment and some experience. Come on, how many of you were here last night? All right. And he led them out of bondage. God did great miracles, parted the Red Sea. Their breakfast rained down from the sky every morning. So many amazing miracles, water coming out of the rock, all kinds of stuff. And yet the Bible says that They wandered. In the desert, 40 years trying to make what was actually an 11-day journey. And I would imagine some of you are related to those people. I certainly know that they used to be my close relatives. And they thought their problem was the enemies. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Perizzites, you know, all the sites. The ites, and I always say we've all got our own brand of ites. The grouchy bossites, the bad neighborites, the backache-ites. No matter what you call them, we've all got them. And we blame the devil, and we blame our circumstances, and we blame other people. But like I said in yesterday morning's service, I believe it's time to take responsibility for your own joy. Stop giving someone else the responsibility to keep you happy. If you want to be happy, be happy. And if you want to be miserable, nobody's going to be able to stop you. I had such a bad attitude in the early years of our marriage because I'd been abused so badly as a child, and just was very negative and not trusting and all these things. And you know, Dave tried for a while, like any good husband would, to try to keep me happy, and he would try to do this and he'd try to do that. And 2 or 3 years went by, and he looked at me one day and he said, you know what, I've decided no matter what I do, you're not going to be happy, so I'm done trying. When you decide to get happy, let me know. And can I tell you a secret? Some of you are in relationship with people that you need to say the same thing to. Because you've been jumping hoops around them long enough trying to keep them happy, and they've already decided they're not going to be happy. And so really you become codependent on their problem, and their joy determines your joy, and you need to make a decision. I'm going to be happy, you do whatever you want to. Amen? And it's going to make them mad at first, but it may change them. That was one of the best things that Dave did for me, was not let me control his joy. Why have you been 40 years trying to make an 11-day journey? It wasn't their enemies, it was their attitude. They blamed Moses, they blamed God, they easily got discouraged, they were easily depressed, very impatient, always thought they should have more than what they had, very ungrateful, very unthankful. You know, if we do the right thing, then eventually we'll get the right result. But it amazes me the people who don't want to do the right thing, and then they have a bad attitude toward people who are blessed because they did the right thing. You know, I finally got tired of people being jealous of me because of this, and that, and something else. And I finally just started thinking, you know what? Don't want what somebody else has unless you're willing to do what they did to get it. Genesis chapter 4, Cain and Abel. But for Cain, well, let's start in verse 3. And in the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel brought of the firstborn of his flock and of the fat portions. And the Lord had respect and regard for Abel and for his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no respect or regard. Cain offered the work of his own hands. He offered his own works, which God is never pleased with. But Abel offered the firstborn of his flock. I don't know all the reasons why God disrespected Cain's offering, but I'm sure there was a lot of attitude going on there. But for Cain and his offering, verse 5, he had no respect or regard. So Cain was exceedingly angry and indignant, and he looked sad and depressed. He immediately got a bad attitude. It didn't occur to him to think, okay, now if God's not pleased with my offering, then what am I doing wrong that I need to change? Hello? If things aren't working out in my life, then what do I need to look at? We always want to, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. If you continue in my word, you'll know the truth, Jesus said, and the truth will make you free. But it's not the truth about your husband or your kids or your parents or your neighbors that'll make you free. It's the truth that God reveals to you about you. And I know other people have problems. I deal with people all the time with problems. And I'm certainly not saying they don't need to change, but I can't do anything about them. The only person that I can hope to see any change in is me, if I let God work in me, and other people only if I pray for them and trust God to work. Okay, verse 6, and maybe God would want to speak this to some of you today or some watching by TV. And the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And why do you look sad and depressed and dejected? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, then sin crouches at your door, and its desire is for you, and I love this part, but you must master it. You must master it. Don't blame everybody else. Don't blame God. Don't blame the devil. If you do well, you'll be blessed. If you don't, then sin is crouching at your door, and you must resist it and stand against it. One of the best ways, one of the easiest and the best ways to keep yourself right in the center of God's will is to just keep a good attitude. What are some of the most important attitudes? I think that one of the most important things is to always maintain a merciful attitude. Always remember that you've made lots of mistakes, and when other people make mistakes, you don't need to be hard and harsh and legalistic and rigid with them. One of the best things that you can say to people, unless it's a situation where you really do need to deal with something, the best thing to say is, don't worry about it, I make plenty of mistakes on my own. And you know, I've learned to go out of my way. When people make mistakes, I always try to make sure that I go back to them, that I go the extra mile. And even if they've said they're sorry, I want to make sure that my response to them is aggressive enough that they really know that I'm not still bothered. Because sometimes somebody can do something to hurt us and they say, I'm sorry, and we're like, okay. And then they go around and they feel guilty and they're worried about it. It's always nice to just pick the phone up and say, hey, I just want you to know, I don't want you to be concerned about this. Especially with me being in the position of authority I'm in, I know that if people make a boo-boo in front of me and maybe do something that they shouldn't do, that they can feel extra bad. And so I go that extra mile to call them and just say, hey, it's okay. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. Don't worry about it. Have a merciful attitude. And believe me, I didn't show up on planet Earth with one. I had to develop one. You can develop right attitudes. There are personalities, our temperaments, really. Our personality is a result of the God-given temperament we have, and then the things that happen to us in the first few years of our life, and then we call that a personality. Your base bottom line temperament can't be changed, but your personality can always be changed and improved. I'm always going to be an aggressive person, but I've learned to not run all over other people in the midst of my aggression. So there are different personality types, and to be very honest, some people are going to lean a little bit more toward being negative than some other temperament types. I mean, you have the happy, zappy, sanguine people. They park their car and then come out and don't know where it's at in the parking lot, and they just think it's a big joke, it's all funny, and you know, you're going to be late for your appointment, and they're just making a party out of the fact that they can't find their car, and you're like, will you get some responsibility and act like you've got a brain? So I'm going to tell you, there are some people that are just naturally more happy and up, and it's easy for them to have that nose-high attitude all the time. And I think Dave is a little bit like that. He's a more laid-back person, not much bothers him, and I think it's easier for him to just be happy. I'm deeper and have I feel responsible for the whole world, which is my fault. And, you know, I've always had a false sense of responsibility, which I've improved greatly in the last 10 or 15 years. But the thing is I had to work a little more on having a good attitude than maybe he did. But you can't even feel sorry for yourself because of that. Don't say, well, that's just the way I am. That's just the way I am. Don't use that as an excuse. Say, I don't care what kind of problem I've got. With God's help, I can get to the point where I can keep and maintain a good attitude at all times. Maintaining a right attitude is easier than regaining a right attitude. See, it takes a lot of energy to get up, then be down, then try to get back up again, then something else happens you don't like, fall down, then you gotta call everybody to pray for you, get your truckload full of Christians to pick you up again, and you're back up. Now something else happens you don't like. I lived like that for years, and I finally thought, you know what, this is just wearing me out. The up and the down, the up and the down, the up and the down. And I actually found out it's easier for me to not let myself get upset than it is to get upset and then try to calm down. Amen? Resist the devil at his onset. Your attitude is the prophet of your future. It's your best friend or your worst enemy. It's the thing that draws people to us or repels them from us. And it is the primary force that will determine whether we succeed or fail. And to be honest, it really has a lot to do with whether